Hello, my friends. Let's go ahead and jump right into it. Uh, I finished this morning's class, and it was the pretty standard thing. It was the warm up, the shadow boxing, and today was some more sparring. And the sparring was pretty good. I've already sort of transitioned into relaxation mode here afterwards because so here's what happened today. In trying to take the suggestions, the advice I was given before, the way I was holding myself and my stance was very different today than it had been normally. I was trying to be significantly more defensive, trying to keep my chin tucked more, trying to keep my guard up more. And what sort of resulted is I kind of got, how can you say it? I got uh, paralyzed by it because in trying to focus more on defense, I wasn't really throwing offense, and people were sort of dancing around me during the sparring. Um, and I wasn't really feeling too winded, but I was taking a lot more hits than I normally do just because I was pretty much a still target. And I guess trying to implement something that you're not used to, training to learn something that you haven't ever used before, really is a slow process. It's not as simple as just realizing, oh yeah, I need to do these particular things to be more defensive, and then all of a sudden you can do it. I can tell that I was significantly worse this morning, because of that. Even though I do think that having that more defensive structure, being able to tuck my chin more and keep my shoulders in defensive positions when I'm attacking it is important. It obviously is. But I really got the wind kicked out of me today because I was trying to implement something new into how I was sparring and was not adaptive to it. Not adaptive very quickly, anyway. And I thought I was fine. Uh, there weren't any real big hits to the head, nothing that like knocked me to having to take a break, but I was getting tuckered out really quickly, and I thought I was absolutely fine at the end of class, but then in driving home and in getting home, I suddenly just kind of felt this really heavy exhaustion come over me, and I don't know if that's because of not sleeping well last night, if it's because of working too long, because I worked a full day yesterday, and that involves a lot of sitting down, not being up, not uh, basically keeping my body ready for vigorous movement. So I'm not sure. Uh, And I took a few good punches to the face. I gave a few. It was pretty standard, nothing really of note. I will say something that I think I've improved upon in from last week is that for these sparring sessions, I am seeing when people are going for the takedown, and I'm sprawling better. I'm not just trying to like pull my leg out or stomp it down uh, to keep it from being pulled out from under me, but I'm actually putting my weight on the opponent and pushing my legs back, sprawling them out away so that they can't get the leverage they need uh, to do the takedown, which is very much about pulling the leg in and using your body weight to sort of just put the other person's body weight out behind their legs, out from under them. It is not a really good way to describe it because it's more like you're putting their weight behind their legs so that they fall. So I guess that's an improvement. Uh, no real injuries to report. I think I have like a little bit more bruise on the shin, but it's lower than the other one and significantly lighter. There was no there was no shin to shin contact because today's instructor basically said, if you don't have shin guards, don't throw roundhouse kicks. And because of that instruction, I essentially didn't. I did have one sparring partner who was still throwing roundhouse kicks because they had shin guards and I did not. So it was sort of like a very weird circumstance to not have that tool available to me while going up against someone who did have the tool available to them. And I think that's a really important lesson for any kind of fight. You need to have a full toolbox, and if someone else has a tool that you don't have, then they will use it, they will exploit it, and you're going to have to find some way to get out of that, to get around that, or actually have the tool to use. But I suppose that's it. I'm going to keep this morning short. I'm going to try to get to resting real quick. I'm going to go eat some more food, drink some caffeine. Maybe that'll perk me up, with a coffee or something, and be ready for tonight. Okay, so I elected not to go to the evening class, and that's essentially because that exhaustion I mentioned before developed into a headache, and I spent the day pretty much trying to get rid of that, trying to feel better. I'm starting to think that working these 2-a-day classes is not really something that's within my capability, just because I spent an entire year just sitting in the car working rideshare, not really working on my athleticism at all. I mean, I still did weightlifting, strength gains, etc., but it was mainly just repair work for sort of the, I guess you could call it, deterioration or atrophy that comes from spending 8 to 12 hours a day in a, sitting down in a car. And I found that there is a lot of chance for very minor injury, which in general I'm okay with, just because getting through pain is no real big deal for me. I've gotten bumps and bruises in every kind of sports or martial arts, whatever activity that I've been in. I used to get kicked in the gut and in the crotch all the time when sparring in Taekwondo. When I was doing capoeira, I had this problem where my knee kept popping out, and it would just require to be popped back in real quick, and then I would keep going. But getting punched in the face is something that is not super great, something that requires more recovery time, I believe. And a couple of the guys in the class, regardless of how much they're told to keep it light, they still move fast. And a lot of guys don't know how to pull a punch. They may not be trying to use their full strength, but you say, hey, go light, and they think, oh, go fast, but then if they're still going fast, that's still a lot of power. Force is speed times mass, so, and I guess if you want to divide it over the surface area, contact point, etc. So, it builds up if you take a lot of hits, and I took a lot of hits this morning just because I was trying to figure out that other more defensive way to fight and wasn't really doing it well. So I think next time any sparring or light sparring day is going to be trying to think of the principles of that they were telling me for a more defensive posture, but not being super defensive, sort of just going back to what feels right and comfortable, because I did find that I got some benefit out of doing things the way I did before I showed up at the class. It's not an ideal way, and it's definitely not wrong to improve upon it the way I've been told, but to sort of drop everything else in the live sparring sections of the class to try to learn that and practice that is not going to be super conducive to my health. I don't know if that's a correct conclusion, if that's a good idea long term, but it's what I've come to. So I'm going to go back on Wednesday, but I'm going to be taking this evening's class off. And we got some nice engine noise to back up the end of the video. Alright, well, thank you for watching once again. I'll see you next time. Stay true.